He seemed so normal, blending seamlessly into the fabric of suburban life. John Wayne Gacy, a man who enjoyed entertaining children as Pogo the Clown, brought joy and laughter to countless families. His colorful costume and exaggerated smile masked the sinister intentions that lay beneath. A man who neighbors saw as friendly, even helpful. He was the kind of person who would lend a hand with yard work or host a neighborhood barbecue. But beneath the surface, a darkness lurked. A darkness that was hidden behind the mask of a community-minded citizen. A darkness that would stain the very fabric of America. His actions would leave an indelible mark on the nation's psyche, a chilling reminder of the evil that can hide in plain sight. A darkness that would claim the lives of 33 young men, forever etching Gacy's name into the annals of true crime history. Each victim, a life cut tragically short, a story left unfinished. Gacy was a master of deception. He could charm his way into anyone's trust, presenting himself as a successful businessman and a devoted community member. He blended in, a wolf in sheep's clothing. His ability to appear harmless allowed him to operate undetected for years. He lived a double life, his public persona a carefully constructed facade. To the outside world he was a model citizen, but behind closed doors, he was a predator. Behind the mask of normalcy, a predator was at work, driven by a depravity that defied comprehension. He craved power, control, and the thrill of manipulating others. His victims, often vulnerable young men, were lured into his web of horror. They were promised jobs, friendship, and sometimes even a place to stay. He promised them work, friendship, maybe even more. But these promises were nothing more than bait, designed to trap the unsuspecting. Instead, they found only unspeakable terror. The reality of Gacy's true nature was far more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. Gacy's crimes shocked a nation. The sheer scale and brutality of his actions left the public reeling, struggling to comprehend how such evil could exist in their midst. How could someone so seemingly ordinary be capable of such monstrous acts? The question haunted everyone who had ever crossed paths with him. The answer, as investigators would soon discover, lay buried beneath the floorboards of Gacy's seemingly ordinary suburban home. The truth was more horrifying than anyone could have ever imagined. Rumors began to swirl, whispers of missing boys, strange smells emanating from Gacy's house. A chilling unease settled over the community. Police were initially dismissive. John Wayne Gacy, the jovial contractor who hosted neighborhood barbecues? It seemed unfathomable. But the disappearances continued, and the whispers grew louder. One name kept resurfacing: Robert Peast, a teenager who vanished after leaving his after-school job at a pharmacy. Witnesses placed Peast at Gacy's house, discussing a potential job opportunity. It was a lead the police couldn't ignore. The stench of death clung to Gacy, a foul odor he tried to mask with industrial-strength deodorizers. He claimed it was a plumbing issue, a pathetic attempt to explain away the undeniable. The net was closing in, and Gacy, the cunning predator, was about to become the hunted. The final 48 hours before Gacy's arrest were a whirlwind of investigation and dread. The police, now convinced of Gacy's guilt, maintained a constant surveillance. They watched his every move, waiting for the crucial slip-up. Inside his house, Gacy was unraveling. The facade of normalcy crumbled as the pressure mounted. He knew the police were onto him, and his behavior became increasingly erratic. He confided in his lawyer, a chilling confession that sent shivers down the lawyer's spine. He spoke of accidents, of bodies buried beneath his house. The lawyer, bound by confidentiality, grappled with the horrifying knowledge. The hours ticked by, each one bringing the police closer to the truth. They gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, and built their case. Gacy, increasingly agitated, paced his home, a caged animal sensing his impending doom. Section 4. The Walls Close In. Gacy's Last Day of Freedom. December 12, 1978. The day dawned cold and bleak, a harbinger of the horrors about to be unearthed. Gacy, a haunted look in his eyes, went about his day with a forced normalcy. He visited his lawyer, a meeting thick with unspoken tension. He made phone calls, his voice strained, a desperate attempt to maintain control. But the walls were closing in. The police, armed with a search warrant, descended upon his quiet suburban street. Neighbors watched in disbelief as the man they thought they knew was led away in handcuffs. The nightmare was about to be revealed. The man who had embodied the American ideal, the friendly neighbor, the enthusiastic clown, was about to become synonymous with unspeakable evil. The world held its breath. Section 5. Unmasking a Monster. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy sent shockwaves through America. The news spread like wildfire, and the nation was gripped by a mix of horror and disbelief. How could someone who seemed so ordinary, so involved in the community, be capable of such heinous acts? The man who had once been the life of the party, always the center of attention, was now the center of a dark and twisted tale. The one who dressed as a clown to entertain children, bringing joy and laughter to their faces, was now revealed to be a figure of unimaginable terror. The community was in shock. The friendly neighbor, the charitable man who had been so active in local events, was now a figure of terror. The charges were chilling, multiple counts of murder. Each revelation was more horrifying than the last, painting a picture of a man who had led a double life. The victims, young men, lured to Gacy's home under false pretenses. The evidence was overwhelming, and the community was left grappling with the reality of the monster in their midst. The stench of death a macabre testament to the horrors that had unfolded within those walls. The house, once a place of gatherings and laughter, was now a grim reminder of the evil that had lurked within. Gacy, initially defiant, soon cracked under the weight of the evidence. The facade he had maintained for so long began to crumble. He confessed to the murders, each word a chilling revelation of his dark deeds, his words dripping with a chilling detachment, as if he were recounting mundane events rather than the brutal taking of lives. He described his crimes in graphic detail, each account more horrifying than the last. The police officers listening were visibly disturbed, struggling to comprehend the depth of his depravity. His voice devoid of remorse, Gacy's confessions painted a picture of a man completely detached from the gravity of his actions. The world listened in horror as the full extent of Gacy's depravity was revealed. News outlets broadcasted every detail, and people everywhere were glued to their screens and radios, unable to look away from the unfolding nightmare. The man who had hidden in plain sight, blending seamlessly into the fabric of society, was now exposed for the monster he truly was. The monster who had masqueraded as a friend, a neighbor, and a community leader was finally exposed. The arrest of John Wayne Gacy marked the end of a reign of terror and the beginning of a long journey towards justice for his victims and their families. Section 6. Skeletons in the Crawl Space, the Horrific Discovery. The discovery of the bodies sent a collective shudder through the nation. Beneath the floorboards of Gacy's seemingly ordinary home lay a gruesome secret. 29 bodies, carefully wrapped and buried in a shallow grave beneath the house. 4 more were found in the nearby Des Plaines River, discarded like trash. Each victim, a life cut tragically short. The identification process was painstaking, a grim puzzle for forensic experts. Families of missing boys clung to a sliver of hope, praying their loved ones weren't among the victims. The sheer scale of the horror was almost unimaginable. The media descended on the scene, eager to report on every gruesome detail. The world watched in horrified fascination as the nightmare unfolded. Section 7. Justice for the Boys, Gacy's Trial and Conviction. The trial of John Wayne Gacy was a media sensation. The public's fascination with the case was palpable, as people from all walks of life followed every twist and turn of the proceedings with bated breath. Cameras crowded the courtroom, capturing every detail of the proceedings. The intense media coverage ensured that Gacy's trial was broadcasted far and wide, making it one of the most infamous trials in American history. The evidence against Gacy was overwhelming, his own confession sealing his fate. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, including physical items recovered from Gacy's home and testimonies from witnesses who had encountered him. Prosecutors painted a chilling portrait of a cunning predator, a man who lured his victims with promises of work and companionship, only to subject them to unspeakable horrors. They detailed the gruesome methods Gacy used to torture and kill his victims, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. Gacy's defense team attempted to portray him as insane, a desperate plea for leniency. They argued that no sane person could commit such heinous acts, hoping to sway the jury towards a verdict of not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury, however, was unconvinced. They saw through the defense's arguments and focused on the cold, hard facts presented by the prosecution. The jurors' faces were a mix of determination and revulsion as they listened to the harrowing details of Gacy's crimes. After a brief deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict on all 33 counts of murder. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow as the families of the victims finally saw justice being served. Gacy, his face impassive, showed no remorse. His lack of emotion only served to highlight the monstrous nature of his crimes, leaving an indelible mark on all who witnessed the trial. He was sentenced to death, a fitting punishment for the magnitude of his crimes. The judge's words were stern and final, reflecting the gravity of Gacy's actions and the impact they had on the community. Gacy, the monster who had terrorized a community, would finally face justice. His conviction and sentencing brought a sense of closure to the families of the victims and the community at large, marking the end of a dark chapter in their lives.